This is C.R.P.H.A. business advocate, or CBA, essentially in abbreviation. Today I thought I'd talk about Michael Keaton in the sense of the Founder movie, and of course McDonald's in general. Now, due to the movie, more than the whole entire population in this country knows that our favorite neighborhood McDonald's restaurant was not officially started by Ray Kroc himself. But he eventually did put himself into it in contractual joining the with the McDonald's brothers. The McDonald's brothers did not go just this far, as Michael Keaton said. They went further. The basic fact is, Michael Keaton's character of Ray Kroc was perfect, but the one thing is, there's many other things that that they need to possibly put in part two if they do make a part two. Um, the one thing is that Ray Kroc was a strong businessman, but just like anybody else, if you're fought against instead of positive collaboration, yeah, there's gonna be some pushback, right? But the McDonald's brothers thought, seeing that Ray Kroc was on a contractual aspect of where whatever they say goes, and whether he likes it or not, type of thing, that he's going to have to live with it, right? That's not always the case. See, what the McDonald's brothers could have done before any movement happened, and I'm not going against the McDonald's brothers, and I'm not going against Ray Kroc on this one, okay? And I'm not going against the franchise either. Business advocate wouldn't be a business advocate if I did that. Now would I? The one thing is that before they joined in with the first person that they mentioned in the movie, that Ray Kroc essentially took the place of, essentially, and eventually. Then, for example, the McDonald's with the golden arches design, the single golden arches on either side of the building, design in Sacramento here, in Sacramento actually, and that it started selling burritos. It went completely out the concept and purview of the McDonald's brothers, shall we say, business strategies, especially when aside from selling, maybe it may have sold the French fries, hamburgers, shake, and orange drink, and what have you else. But of course, the franchisee um, in that one in the Sacramento location added burritos for any given reason without the okay of the McDonald's. Bad move there. Um, but of course the McDonald's brothers eventually just let it go as it was, right? From what we can tell in accordance to the movie. Um, but the one thing though, once you add one thing, it needs to go through the one or two people who started the whole entire concept. Yes, the McDonald's brothers started with a movie theater after going into the aspect of um, getting jobs and while they were in school and whatnot. uh, and then eventually they went into business for themselves. They found that and then they later found that the business person, in the sense of, say, it could have been a person like Carl Karcher, the founder of Carl's Jr., and a person like him, essentially, that had a hot dog cart, was doing a lot better business than they were in the movie theater business. That is, when the McDonald's brothers were in the movie theater business. For those who have not seen the movie The Founder, I encourage you to just go buy it and watch it, because it's a real good movie, by the way. And I'm not advertising. I'm just saying my own opinion, because I have two copies of it. One I watch and one as a collector's item. Anyway, the one thing that the McDonald's brothers could have done is made it to where that that no matter what, Ray Kroc would not be able to separate and make any general general aspects of pushing against them, when basically they're the one that started the speedy service system, and why in a number of locations you still see the little cartoon character, hamburger hamburger bun faced cartoon character of Speedy with a chef's hat and everything, right? Mm, the Speedy service system was more than revolutionary. I can guarantee you that. Some people would call one actor that played the younger brother called it a not only revolutionary, but he also called it in the sense of like Henry Ford, the founder and the founder of the Ford dealership. The car and truck making company, anyway, I should say, really, in that sense. But outside of that, it was a lot more revolutionary than the Burger King concept, really. The flame broiled aspect is it's not that unique. It's not really unique at all, really, because it just takes off from other shall we say establishments of sorts that may have been around at the time that may not have been heard of, except for maybe known of within, say, various communities and states. But the McDonald's brothers did have a more than a revolutionary concept. Um, the one thing is, they did start it right after the fact that they saw that the drive-in concept really was more than costly, more than they really expected to possibly put forth. But for as long as they had it, with the car hops and everything, for as long as they had it, it lasted fairly long. But they didn't want to go continuously into it, because because the cost of various could be exponential, even for the time. Um, and of course and that type of concept brought in, shall we say, hoodlums and whatnot. Even according to the McDonald's brothers on the movie, or the ones that played the McDonald's brothers on the movie, I should say, really. Um, and I'd say Michael Keaton did a good job. But the one thing is that I think he may have missed one thing to the aspect of Ray Kroc. Ray Kroc was a businessman, but he wasn't as vicious as it's portrayed, really. Um, it it was. I mean, I find that Ray Kroc was more okay. Like, if you don't want to do this, but I believe it's ready. I believe it's good for the business. So what can I do to, But yet at the same time, it was that while he was using a percentage of his own money to to build the business, expand it essentially as he did, and with adding more people into the franchisee aspect of the franchise, um, and within the same concept, and eventually he ran in, and even according to the movie, as you saw, is if you've seen the movie again, um, that the people who he brought into the business in the beginning, they went outside the purview as much as one in Sacramento did, and it's even shown and as well stated on the movie. But Ray Kroc felt like that he was at a stalemate when the younger brother in the movie said no. He didn't want to do the inexpensive way, which would have helped Ray Kroc on that part of it. I mean, like the McDonald's brothers could have kept the ice cream part of it, but yet it didn't mean that the, shall we say, the multi mixer thing would have, I mean the instant mix, essentially, I should say, really, would have been able to would have to go directly to the McDonald's brothers as well as the franchisees, that Ray Kroc brought into the the whole business circle of the franchise. Um, there are legal ways that the McDonald's brothers could have had it to where they had more than a stronghold, and without using the concept of money, they had a stronghold of the business, which means if Ray Kroc wanted to do something, they would have to meet face to face, and instead of doing the phone thing all the time like you seen on the movie, um, to explain it, and even have one of the franchisees come with him at the meeting, then bingo, it could have easily been easier done that way. Therefore, the McDonald's brothers could have kept the ice cream concept in their location, which was the very first location. Um, and the very first location didn't have the golden arches, of course. It was more just like a regular food or ice cream stand setup, kind of octagonish or circular or whichever. Um, and the one other thing too is that once they got that in the contractual aspects of it, then Rick Rock would have been eventually, he might have given up and taken that idea and expanded it in some other way, if not by joining in with another, shall we say, franchise. But even as the real Ray Kroc explained why he liked the aspect of McDonald's a lot more than, say, Michael Keaton did as Ray Kroc on the movie. Of course, there's clips of the actual Ray Kroc explaining to a certain extent of of why he stood strong with the franchise of McDonald's, and therefore he did take over it. But as many children, even in our era, thought that Ray Kroc started the whole thing, I also thought that. Okay, but I found, um, but even before the movie came out, I saw certain various parts to where I find out that it was the McDonald's brothers, just like Tom and Joe started at Long's. The two brothers started at Long's. The Dick and Mac essentially started the McDonald's. And you know that um, when the McDonald's brothers did start that concept, I mean they basically could have easily expanded it a lot further than Arizona, a lot further than Sacramento, a lot further than anywhere else really. They went to the points to where they were focused only on the one location that they had in San Bernardino, California. Um, Basically, they considered that the only thing that they should focus on and nothing else. For as long as they did would want to or even feel up to doing, they wanted to focus on that one location. Mm, I know many people might think that it was a big mistake for them to bring in Ray Kroc, but without Ray Kroc, of course, we in our generation, from say latter '60s, early to late '70s through the 1980s, wouldn't really know that if at all McDonald's existed. Therefore, we'd only know possibly of a Burger King, Carl's Jr., Taco Bell, various others. Um, could Ray Kroc have been better dealings with even with Harry Sonnenberg and who Ray Kroc teamed up with to not only expand but also get a profit from while he franchised out, as he expanded the company. Be that, of course, by getting franchisees essentially in the business concept of what the Woody McDonald's was established. Yeah, he could have. In Is it too late for McDonald's to be doing the same um, operational aspects of what In and Out's doing? No, but it will take some time. Um, the 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 aspect of In and Out compared to McDonald's, same coloration. You'd figure that McDonald's would go against them. Would they use the same concept of the arrow being like a kind of a distorted arch, and then using the red, which is usually the McDonald's backing of the arch that's put together to form the M, right? You'd think they would go against. In fact, McDonald's went against one particular franchise or franchisee essentially of a different concept, but using the same M logo, but in a different way. But he had no connection, and I found this out. He had no connection to the McDonald's concept or franchise in general. But yet McDonald's went against him anyway. Um, and I'd say that Ray Kroc could have easily kept the McDonald's brothers in the loop, but instead he did a contractual thing to where Ray Kroc was without any provocation, anything else that that would be possibly fought against or fought towards or tried to if the McDonald's brothers were to try to reestablish, even by legal standards, the company and its name. Um, the one thing is that with the fact that the McDonald's brothers and Ray Kroc did have a good relationship in the beginning, they should have kept it. They should have kept it that way. That way, the McDonald's brothers would have been able to. They wouldn't. They wouldn't have to worry about the proceeds of any future McDonald's, because if they were kept in the loop as they should have been in the beginning, then the family wouldn't. I mean, I'm not gonna say if there would be no movie in the whole aspect of what really happened in the collaboration between the McDonald's brothers and Ray Kroc. I because there could have been and could have been, shall we say, played out differently. Who's to say, really, right? Um, but seeing that it didn't, Ray Kroc had a vendetta, obviously. He was put at a stalemate, so much so that he felt like he couldn't move and live his own life the way he may have felt and thought, emotionally and psychologically. Even while trying to help expand the business or expand the franchise, essentially. Um, but the one thing is, though, and again, Ray Kroc could have easily done it differently without going towards the vengeance against the McDonald's brothers in the sense of taking full ownership. He could have easily had it to where the McDonald's brothers would still have a percentage of say at least, because after all, it is and it was and it still is to even to this day their concept. Aside from the fact that things have been updated over the course of 50, 70 years or more since the actual first installment of the franchise. But the one other aspect to it is that the McDonald's brothers just let it happen. They felt like they had no other aspect aside from where they had full ownership of the original first location of their McDonald's location. But of course, they had to spend money to change the name, even by commercialized rights and whatnot. And yet it was known to be as the Big M, or so it's been said that it's been changed from that, from what Ray Kroc bought them out of, which of the name and the concept and whatnot, to where they had to change and they'd be able to use the same concept, but that they came up with, but change the name to the Big M. Um, and I know at first Ray Kroc, even according to the movie, Ray Kroc wanted to take ownership of the very first location, which was just a circular or octagon design of a stand. Um, Instead of expecting the McDonald's brothers to give him a substantial amount of money in order to stay in with the McDonald's name and everything, he could have easily given them the benefit of the doubt. And you can do this in business as long as there's no trepidation and there's trepidation in any level and type in business as well as your normal lives. I know that, or in anybody's life really. But there was no mention of that. It was basically that Ray Kroc could have easily done it, and which would basically, even though with the fact that even though Ray Kroc owned the name of the business and the whole concept, even though it was invented by the McDonald's brothers, which basically you could say they would have shared, been able to still share the aspect of the business, even though the McDonald's brothers came up with the concept, the invention. Therefore, Ray Kroc took it and took that from them. When basically it was already established, even in the movie, that the McDonald's brothers came up with a whole concept of the Speedy system, as as it was once known as, in where they had what people are calling the flour sifters, to shoot out the right amount of ketchup and mustard. Um, but the one thing also is that the movie is set in some way, even according to the one video, and I will put the one video on the description here of this video. But the one thing is it's like the grandson of one of the McDonald's brothers is using that as some sort of payback. Wrong aspect, because even though when the McDonald's brothers were dealing with Ray Kroc, I'm not exactly sure how far back it was that that grandson was born, that was interviewed about when it came to when they were about to do a story even about McDonald's and the movie. I He might have been still somewhat in grade school at this point, but when McDonald's was essentially taken from the McDonald's brothers in a mm, partial out of court dispute between the McDonald's brothers and Ray Kroc. Um, but it could have been just something to show what really happened and who really started the concept, who really started the business of McDonald's, who really and what made it come to be where Ray Kroc took over the company. Which basically that's a whole aspect of it. It's not really a revenge thing, you know. I remember also I mentioned I called McDonald's actually the corporate office essentially, um, and I mentioned that when they do put when they do open another McDonald's like they did, because it was like a 2 or 3 story building with the separate arches on either side of the building, and it was an indoor deal. Um, and I had mentioned why not have, besides Ronald himself, but also have the one that started, the one that was in the beginning of the whole business, which was a costume of Speedy, because that was the whole aspect. It was that Speedy was the mascot, or the shall we say revolutionary concept, um, that the McDonald's brothers came up with. Therefore, he should be put into the grand opening aspect of the whole company. In fact, why he hasn't been, even with various events that McDonald's has had over the years. Who's to say? Except for the fact that maybe Ray Kroc didn't want it to be as a reminder to him some in psychological aspects within him, saying, "Well, even though it's not really my, even though I took it over and bought the McDonald's brothers out, I'm going to use my mascot for the company and for the franchise. I'm not going to use what they came up with, even though it was the McDonald's brothers in what made McDonald's what it is even today." Even with the additions that Ray Kroc came up with over the course of the the rest of the existence of the company, from the time that he bought the McDonald's brothers out, by where he bought the name and the concept of the whole entire franchise aspect, where he would have more control over it and over the franchisees, more than, and the McDonald's brothers wouldn't have any say so one iota. I'd say pretty soon, and I don't like saying this, and yet McDonald's is one of my favorite childhood memory type of restaurants. And it will be even from the very first day that I went there as a child. And I'm not going to say what location it is, but it was in my hometown. I'll tell you that. Um, I'd say that Ray Kroc could have easily done something to where McDonald's brothers still had partnered up with him, and therefore even they wouldn't really have to be that much in communication, except for when it came to maybe expansion. Because I know even after, I'm sure that he had aspects of where he wasn't sure exactly if it was the right location at various points. Harry Sonnenberg could have easily had it that way though too. Even though Ray Kroc had the full rights and reserved rights essentially to the name as well as the company itself, outside the invention in the beginning of the speedy service system, as it's known. Um, Harry Sonnenberg could have easily had it to where the McDonald's brothers had the name on their stand, but they would have to go through Ray Kroc, unless Ray Kroc said, "Okay, whatever you want to do with the business, do it for that location, and I'll be okay with it. Just let me know when you're going to do it," type of thing. Harry Sonnenberg could have done that. Therefore, that wouldn't really put any hold on the McDonald's brothers, except for a hold and control over the franchisees and the locations. But at the same time, though, too, even in today's standings in the business world, and I'm a very strong supporter of this, what the In and Out founders did outside that smaller stand, when they expanded to the way they are now, and yet they're gradually expanding. Harry Sonnenberg could have easily done it that way too. Could have easily set it up that way to where Ray Kroc wouldn't have to worry about stockholders and shareholders. He wouldn't have to worry about the company wouldn't have to worry about a damn thing when it came to NYSE, the New York Stock Exchange. Many might think that that the In-N-Out does have to worry about the NYSE. They don't, or else they'd be popping up as much as Starbucks did in its beginning. In-N-Out's doing a slow and steady expansion. I call that smart, business savvy. If I were to be in any joining with either McDonald's or or Burger King or any other one, even In and Out, I would direct them that way to keep it strong and steady with not having any connection with the stockholders and shareholders, and it's more than possible, and without having any connection to and with the NYSE. Any small business person can do the same thing if they start out that way, because it will cost them more than a pretty penny if they don't. If they start going a certain way and then connect with stockholders and shareholders, it's going to cost them more than a pretty penny to separate from them in order to get to the concept of the in and out situation. Although I'm not saying, again, like I said this before on Business Advocate video, is that they won't necessarily be going the same general way, if you will, that In and Out did, because they started it out that way, right? But they could go in a way that would fit them and to where they're able to still go into financial stability. And I'm talking about small business owners. I'm talking about McDonald's. I'm talking about every other franchise and retailer can do this. I'm a strong supporter and opponent to this. Have I done it myself? You might be asking. I could if I really wanted to go that way. But right now, but if a person like Harry Sonnenberg were to join and have talks with me in the sense of that, I'd tell him straight up, look at the way that In and Out did it. Then try to associate the business to where we can run the same way, even though it might be a totally different business concept, but the same way, but also at the same time, nobody would be able to take that away from me, like it was taken away from the McDonald's brothers. You know how long it would take him to do that if he was really uh, wanting to do that in order to make it to where I would actually have a business of my own, which I do in a way by doing what I'm doing right now. To start with, by making videos as well as doing what I've been doing since 2004 in the sense of advocating of my own accord and whatnot. Um, but the basic fact is that I could make money by doing it that way too. Um, but the one thing is that right now I don't see any reason to, except for I've been advocating for each and every person in my own way, the way I know how to, by informing people to start with and talking with people as well. Now, could even Burger King go the same direction as In and Out? Oh yeah, let's put it this way: if Burger King, Carl's Jr., and say Jack in the Box went the way of In and Out, their concept, where they're not connected with any stock and shareholder, right? And where they're not even connected to the NYSE, but they're still public, right? Would that affect them? Not if they did it right. Would that cost them any affordability and financial aspects when it comes to affording as many locations as they have, even that they're connected with any franchisee essentially, or the person that's franchising the location under the Jack in the Box, Burger King, Carl's Jr., Wendy's name or whatever, right? Although there is one, there is one that will not be able to do it, at least from what I can tell right now. There is one that won't be able to do the concept of the in and out, um, which basically is going to make it to where they're eventually non-existent anyway, especially the way they've been running things anyways, from what I heard from one particular manager, aka franchisee of a one particular location. Um, and this one is Jim Boys. Jim Boys has it in a way that the cost mostly is put upon the shoulders of the franchisee. And instead of being having a contractual aspect where the corporate of the franchise pays a percentage, even be that of a higher percentage, and the franchisee of the one location pays maybe a moderate percentage, or as much as they can logically, then they would essentially collaborate between one another in order to make it an actuality, more than a possibility. Even when it comes to redesigning the building and restructuring the building to keep it within the state and county and the city regulated codes, especially when it comes to health code and whatnot else. Um, I'd say eventually Jim Boys, and I don't like saying this about businesses, but I'd say eventually the business of Jim Boys is gonna be going down the business tubes, in even if they were to um, file for Section 11 commercialized bankruptcy. Um, it wouldn't really save them 100%. It would have saved Radio Shack if they played the cards right. It would have saved Circuit City as well as Fry's Electronics if they played the cards right. It would have saved Sears if the idiot CEO of Sears Kmart would have played the cards a lot better than he thought he was doing. But it didn't, did it? Because when you're making a large amounts of money, you think you know everything, and if any number of things work for the company to the point of success, full percentages and whatnot, right? And viewings and such like that, even by graphs, because although graphs don't really tell you a whole lot of shit anyway, they only tell you something that could be possible if if the metaphorical cards are played right and properly. The metaphorical cards are being played right by In and Out. They could be done by McDonald's as well. Now, I'd say McDonald's still has a chance. And even after the um, paying the McDonald's brothers family members of what they're owed for however long it's been, McDonald's would be able to still build up as much as they know they would need, and gradually separate themselves from the NYSE stockholders and shareholders, and then look over as well as they do this, they look over the concept of the way the In and Out's been operating, and then do it in their own way. They don't have to do the same damn thing as In and Out's doing. Same thing with Burger King, same thing with Carl's Jr., same thing with Wendy's, and same thing with White Castle. Same thing with every other business that there is out there that's retail and franchise in the in that's serving every community and customer, be that of course the consumer essentially, that they've been serving since they opened wherever the locations may be, which basically would still be building up more revenue for the corporate offices, as well as the franchisee and franchisor. And then when they have fully established it to where it's strong and steady, then we could see a McDonald's and Carl's Jr., Wendy's in say the 23rd, 24th century. I'm not saying we won't, but it would be more of a possibility because I'd say the way things are going for In and Out, more than likely we'd see them in the 23rd, 24th century than any other. Same thing with Longs, same thing with, you know. But all in all, Ray Kroc could have kept the business aspects where the McDonald's brothers were still in the loop, still involved with the company. Although Taco Bell could do the same thing in the concept of what the operation that In and Out's doing as well. But it's still outside of that. McDonald's could still not only do the same concept in their own way as In and Out's doing, again without um, having any connection or collaboration with the NYSE and the stock and shareholders. I'd say there's still a chance that, if at all, if the McDonald's brothers family want any part of McDonald's, it should be offered to them. To be honest, they don't have to take the whole. They wouldn't where they wouldn't have to spend any money to do so though, because McDonald's already has a full control over the whole concept. And yet, if there was any changes that they couldn't think of, then maybe the McDonald's brothers family could think of something. Basically, it would be on a continuous loop until the McDonald's brothers family said no more. Simple. On a separate note, and this is, of course, it's not business wise, but I'd say that if a person like Harry Sonnenberg were to talk with me, I'm cool. I'd be able to talk with him and see what he has in mind. But the one thing is I'm not going to have my business being taken away from me, because I would never do that to anybody else. Yes, the business world can be vicious and not really 100% forthright, but there's ways where it can be forthright and still succeed. Even if the person who calls himself the Daily Woo could do the same thing. And you'll find the person that calls himself the Daily Woo on YouTube. But I don't think he's really interested in doing that. Although he's been claiming that he's selling shirts, he apparently isn't doing that well of a business on selling shirts. Though he could use the same concept that I mentioned. I'm using the same concept, but in my own way. If you have any questions, be sure to ask me on the comment section below. And if you're new to this video, please be sure to click the subscribe button and the bell. And if you have any questions, or if you have any topics that you want me to talk, you think would be a good topic to talk about, let me know. And if you want to join me in the advocate business of the business advocate, or humanitarian advocate, or citizen, or education, or disability advocate, or even the health advocate aspect, um, please let me know on that one too. And I have business advocate and all the names of the advocate things that I mentioned just now. The pages are on Facebook. Please stay safe. Please stay strong. And also know this: never give in to failure. And you don't have to be in business to do that. Have a good day.